Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present to you double knit bobbles. Look at that, aren't they pretty? They are fantastic for adding texture to your work, and you can see just how far they stand proud from your double knit fabric. You get contrasting bobbles on a different colour background, and on the other side, of course, as with all double knitting, or with most double knitting, you get the opposite colour showing through, white bobbles on a green background. Working these bobbles has quite a few different stages to it, but I will endeavour to show you as clearly and as simply as possible how you can add these bobbles to your own knitting. The first thing to notice is that on the row below where you want to make your bobble, you need to work one stitch in the contrasting colours, one pair of stitches I should say, in the contrasting colours, because we're going to knit into that contrast stitch to create a bobble in the contrast colour. So I've knit along, you can see I'm obviously working with white as my background, and I've worked along to where I've already done my contrasting stitches in the previous row, and I'm just about to see this knit stitch here is actually green on top of a column of white stitches. That's the contrast one. So what I do is I go in to knit. I'm actually going to swap my yarns over, I think, because I'm working with the green yarn at the moment and I'm much more competent with my right hand. So I'm going to go in to knit, wrap and pull through, but leave this stitch on the needle. I'm going to then do a yarn over, go back into the same stitch, knit it and pull it through, but leave it on the needle, yarn over one more time, and then finally go back into the same stitch, knit it, and finally slip off. Now that has created 5 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out of 1 stitch. These are our bobble stitches. This is a 5-stitch bobble. The next thing to do is I want to work 2 more rows in stocking stitch for this bobble. I can either turn the work round and purl back across these, but I prefer to knit backwards. If you're unaware or unfamiliar with the concept of knitting backwards, it's basically going in through the back loop with your working needle, which is now your left needle, wrapping the yarn counterclockwise as normal, pulling through and slipping off. There are lots of tutorials online which will show you how to do this if you're not sure, but for me I find it easier than having to fiddle about with turning the work for just 5 stitches, which seems a little bit labour intensive for not very much payoff. So there we go, I've knitted backwards across my 5 stitches, and now my third row of the bobble, row 1 is creating the stitches, row 2 is knitting back across, row 3 is another knit row, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and now I do need to turn my work because I'm going to be working some decreases on the reverse side. Turning the work over, you can see here are my 5 bobble stitches, and I'm going to first of all decrease them from 5 to 3, and then on the final row from 3 to 1. There's quite a few different types of decreases, so keep track. The first thing we do is purl 2 together. So I go into the first 2 stitches on the left needle, both together purlwise, wrap, pull through, and slip both loops off the needle at the same time. Then I purl the centre stitch, and now I'm going to work the opposite of a purl 2 together, which is an SSP. The purl 2 together slopes to the left as we look at the back of the fabric, the SSP slopes to the right as we look at the back of the fabric, and it's worked as follows. You slip the first stitch knitwise, going in as if to knit, slip the second stitch separately, also knitwise, transfer them back onto the left needle without twisting the stitches, and then purl 2 together through the back loop. So I go in, it's quite difficult to get this on camera, I go in this direction from this side, bringing the needle through both loops and out towards me. Can you see that? I'll get that focus there. So that's the direction I've gone in from. Go round the back of the 2 loops, wiggle the needle through, then I can wrap the purl and take the loop back again and slip those 2 loops off the needle. Turn the work once more back to where we started, and now I've got down to 3 stitches. You can see how the 2 decreases I've done are symmetrically angling in towards the centre. I'm now going to work a centred double decrease to create a beautiful symmetrical decrease which gets these 3 stitches down to 1. So now I want to work, this is the thing that most people will forget with these bobbles. The thing to do is I although I'm working a green bobble, I want to create this final decrease with the other yarn. So in order to do that, I just pop that one out the way over to the left and pick up the other yarn from underneath. So it's important that it comes from underneath. So if you see on the back of the yarn, these two strands are not twisting around each other at all. So I'm now working with the white yarn. To do the centre double decrease, you slip 2 stitches knitwise together, not one at a time as we did before, but together, going into both stitches as if to knit them together, slipping them off the needle. That swaps them round and twists them, and then I knit that 3rd stitch with the white yarn, pull it through, and then pass the 2 slipped stitches, you can do them together or you can do them individually, it doesn't really matter, over the top and off the needle. And there we have our first bobble. The thing to do at this point is give that a nice tug so it's nice and secure. We're going to then move on. It looks a little bit wobbly at the moment, don't worry about that, we can sort that out when we've finished the whole sequence. So now that's our first bobble, and we now need to create the bobble for the back of the work, and we don't turn it round, we just work it from the front. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this yarn forward, I'm going to purl the next stitch, which is our other contrast stitch from the reverse side, purl that one but leave it on the needle, yarn over, purl into the same stitch, leaving it on the left needle, yarn over, purl one more time into that same stitch, just as we did before, creating 5 stitches out of 1, purl it and slip off. Now this time I am going to turn the work, and now I'm going to knit across these 5 stitches, 5 bobble stitches here, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and to create our 3rd row I'm going to knit backwards. Again, you could turn and purl these stitches, but I prefer to do it this way. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. It's very tricky to keep this on camera, I'm usually much more fluent with my movements. And 5. Now again I want to go from 5 stitches down to 3, and we're working on this side of the work this time, so we want to slope this increase inwards towards the centre, so it's going to be a left slanting decrease. Did I say increase? I meant decrease, of course. Left slanting decrease, which will be standard SSK. So slip one, slip another one, knit them together through the back loops. Then I'm going to knit that centre stitch, and then I'm going to work a knit 2 together to slant this decrease to the right, also into the centre. There we go, now we've got down to 3 stitches. Turn the work once more, and now we want to work a decrease which is a centre double decrease as seen from the back of the work, but we're going to work it from the front. So it's going to have exactly the same effect, but on the other side. So this time we want to slip the first 2 stitches purlwise through the back loop, but before we do that I'm going to bring the contrasting yarn back between the needles, because that's the one we're going to create this decrease with. So starting with my contrast yarn in front of the needle, ready to perform this decrease, so it looks like a centre double decrease from the reverse, the first thing to do is to slip these 2 stitches together through the back loops, purlwise through the back loops, so in between the 2nd and 3rd stitch on the needle, and then I'm going to pick up both of those 2 coming through towards myself. Now, that's not easy to get on camera, so I'll try it one more time. Here we go, in between the 2nd and 3rd stitches, coming through these 2 stitches towards yourself, there we go, and then I can slip them from one needle over to the other. The next thing to do is to purl this final stitch, purling it there, and then I want to pass the 2 slip stitches over the top, and I find it easier to go in through the back for this one because the yarn's at the front. So I go into those 2 white stitches there and then pass them over the top of that one and off the needle. Then I can take both yarns to the back of the work. We have now created our 2 bobbles, but it's a good idea at this time to use the last yarn we've just been working with, which was the green yarn. So just pull on that a little bit and make sure those 2 bobble stitches are nesting nice and close together. Then you can carry on knitting across the row, working knit stitches and purl stitches as necessary until you get to the point where you want to perform another bobble, which I will show you in a more edited form in just a sec. So now again I'm back to the place where I've got my contrasting stitch, which I set up in the row previous, and that's where I'm going to make the bobble. So as before, the first thing to do is to knit into it 5 times. So knit it once, yarn over, knit it again, yarn over, knit it a 3rd time, which creates our 5th stitch there, and then I'm going to work 2 stitches of stocking stitch, with me going backwards, but of course remembering that you can turn the work and purl if you don't want to do it this way. 3, 4, and 5. Our 3rd row is 5 knit stitches. 3, 4, and 5. Then we turn the work. Turn the work, and now I want to do these decreases from 5 to 3 and then 3 to 1. So the first one is purl 2 together, so go into the first 2 stitches together purlwise, wrap, pull through and slip them both off, purl the centre stitch, and then an SSP, so slip 1 knitwise and slip a second one knitwise, transfer them back to the needle and purl through the back loop. The cable's getting in the way. Purl through the back loop. Focus, focus, camera, come on. There we go. And I turn the work once more, and this time I'm going to lay this yarn out of the way and bring the contrasting yarn through, because I want to do this with the other one. I don't bring it through at all, I just have it ready to go, I should say. And then I work the centre double decrease by slipping 2 stitches together knitwise, not one at a time but together, knitting that final stitch, and then slipping those 2 slipped stitches back over and ready to start again on the second bobble of the pair. So I bring the yarn forward and I purl 1, leaving it on the needle, yarn over, purl again, same stitch, yarn over, purl a 3rd time into the same stitch and slip off. Then I am going to turn the work, and I'm going to knit those 5 bobble stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you can turn and purl, but I'm going to knit backwards, 1, 2, oop, that didn't go so well. 3, 4, and 5. Now I want to decrease from 5 down to 3, so I'm going to do the SSK, so it leans into the centre. S, S, and K, pull that through, knit the centre stitch, and then knit 2 together to finish that little part of the manoeuvre. Then I'm going to turn the work once more. Turn it back the other way, otherwise I'll get too tangled up. Too late, tangled already. And I'm going to bring my green yarn forward. This is the contrasting colour from what I'm making the bobble in. And I'm going to slip these 2 stitches together purlwise through the back loop, so going in this crazy direction here. Slipping those from one needle to the other, purling the final stitch, and then passing those 2 stitches back over, digging the needle into the back and pulling them over the top. Take both my yarns to the rear of the work again, giving that green yarn a nice little tug to snug it up all nice and neatly against the previous one that we've just made, and then carry on double knitting. You may find while you're doing these bobbles that once you've completed them, you might want to just sort of get your fingers in there and fluff them up nicely. But I think you'll agree that they make very, very tidy, very charming bobbles. And there we are, double knit bobbles on both sides of the fabric. Again, they need a little bit of attention just to pull them out into shape, but it doesn't take too much effort. Double knit bobbles.